Yeah, let's take it away. So, here I'll put the first slide up with our muse question, or our question for the day, our mental question, which is about the muse. Tom, do you want to take this away, or?
Yeah, I'd love to. So I spent some time going through the chat. Thanks to those of you who did put your muses in. I really thought Jenny added the Harvard Business Review article on coalitions, and then the West Side muse. Linda added Read by Fourth, Philadelphia. Let's see. Kate added Campaign for Grade Level Reading, and Kristen Diverse Books for All. So I mean, I think it'd be great if any of you, not mandatory, but maybe make a quick comment on those. I mean, what did you like about those? Why did you put those in the chat? I know some of those are national coalitions, others are, Chicago or Philadelphia specific. So kind of open the floor. And then if you didn't have time to add a muse, but you have one, would love to have you do that. Like just verbally share with us.
Well, I can speak to the Diverse Books for All Coalition. Turn the Page just got engaged with this organization about 6 months ago. And but they had existed for a while longer than that. I think what intrigued me the most, and it may be my perspective more than it was the actual pathway, but it seemed as though the original concept was to leverage the book buying capacity and power of a larger group to get better pricing. But what it turned into, and maybe it was an intention that I just wasn't aware of, but what it turned into was the ability to really influence the publishing field with that, the power of the dollar, to ensure that publishers were aware that there was an interest and a need for more diverse authors, more diverse representation in the books, representation across a broader range of diversity, and that we could make that move forward just with an organization that was making a commitment to buying 600,000 books in 18-month period of time. So that was exciting to me to see that it wasn't just advancing our need to have lower prices, but to actually change the landscape of children's books.
Yeah, I love that. I actually belong to a book club that's like white men, that we only read books written by people of color or women, with the idea of trying to understand, our privilege and what we can do about it. And so it reminded me of that. I mean, this really intense focus on books of diversity, and fantastic. I loved it. Anybody else? Jenny, you had a couple things. I don't know if you'd like to share. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Well, when I first did the search, I ran across that Harvard Business Review, and I was like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but then I really kind of dove into the West Side United, and their goal was kind of to have a stronger, healthier community, and have more equity with people of color with health benefits. That's kind of what their starting mission was, but they're kind of evolving, and they're adding programs. The governance of this program kind of is at where I think we were kind of talking about, where there's, a paid staff member, there's dedicated staff for certain committees, if you will. And so I liked how the operations committees and the executive leadership, all of that kind of hit a note with me with what we're doing here. And then they also had metrics on their dashboard, which we kind of talked about, how we wanted to be a hub for information for literacy stuff. So all of that kind of just rang true with me. And of course, I'm in the hospital setting, so that is even better.
Love it. And I'm a big Harvard Business Review guy, so love that. Loved having access to that. Thanks for that. So I guess Linda or Kate, I don't know if either of you want to add to what you already posted, or if anybody else has something.
Sure. I just have been really impressed with the Read by Fourth resources. And I can drop it in the chat to the website, but it looks like they started with probably a lot of organizations like we have, trying to tackle different angles, and kind of like the thing that Adam shared in the flip video. Some of us are building tunnels, some of us are building bridges. We're all trying to get across the river, but doing it in different ways. So it just looked like on the outside, I mean, the website's fabulous, that they've brought all these groups together that are doing all these different things and tackling early literacy and lots of different avenues. It seems to be very community-based. It's not centered in the schools, or I couldn't really tell. You know, I didn't look exhaustively at the partnerships, but it didn't seem like it was like a school partnership kind of model. So I'm really curious about, you know, the evolution of the organization. There's kind of a cool graphic on the homepage of the website that shows the process, which I thought was pretty cool. And then their list of partners was pretty cool to see. Oh, thank you. Just it reminds me of, you know, how we've been talking so much about process. You know, that this seems like a cool model to emulate. And it looks like they've had some impact. So that's pretty significant too.
All right. Anyone else want to share a muse? I love this exercise, and as a college professor, I'm gonna steal this for my for classes to bring in muses for different topics. I think it's great.
I put in the thing kind of why the campaign for grade level reading is great for just what we're doing, just because I think they're addressing a lot of the similar things. But for me, I love that they offer weekly seminars, really kind of day, you know, they have stuff that they offer day, like webinars that you can access all the time. So sometimes it's just about providing access for families, or addressing, you know, families who are living in poverty, whatever it is. It's I always find, like, if I'm just needing some sort of professional development, they're just a great resource to you know, sign up, and you don't have to actually watch it in person. You can go back and in your free time and watch what they have. So just as a resource for that kind of thing. I think they do a lot of really similar things, which I talked about, but just for me, in my own practice, they're great just for professional development purposes. So.
All right. Thanks, Kate. Anybody else? Other muses?
In Oakland Reach, several years ago, I was able to go visit and meet the initial founder. And their original focus was just going to be advocacy, you know, being able to train parents how to organize and mobilize and address advocacy issues. But when they got into the work and they started working with families, they realized that there were other needs. And so they really began to take several of the parents that had kind of been working with them, and they actually brought them on board as co-founders, and then enlisted about 14 other organizations. They call them collaborators or partners that participate in various ways to support their work. And they've then grown and expanded to not only address advocacy, but do direct service work and things like that. And so I ran into the initial founder again, but a few months ago, we were out of town at the same conference, and we just talking about the evolution of the organization. Is so, what I love about it is so community centered. So they really live and walk out doing with the community versus to or for the community. that the community is involved in every step of the way in the work that they do to impact the children and families in Oakland.
Can you repeat the name of that, Katina? The name of the coalition?
Oakland Reach.
Oakland Reach. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I dropped it in this morning. Sorry.
Oh, I missed it. Thanks. All right, anyone else? Going once? Going twice? All right, Adam, back over to you.
Fantastic. All right. So that was amusing talking about the muses. Yeah, very cool. And now we'll just get into our focus for today, our POM. So today,
Can you
the
make that full
focus,
screen? I don't know if you shared the screen the way that you meant to.
I don't know what I'm sharing. Okay, let me try that again. Can you see that now?
There we go. That's better.
All right. Very good. Thank you. So today we thought our focus is really going to be on our methods, purpose, outcomes. We're going to review those, but really drive toward methods. So first of all, is that the right focus? And then if so, why does it matter that we do that?
Well, we've pretty effectively defined our purpose and our outcomes at this point. So it's just next, right?
It's what we've been working up toward. I mean, you all have been very patient. A lot of groups find this very challenging because they want to just get right to the methods. So yeah, it's time for that. Good. Why else does it matter?
This is where those of us, so I was thinking a lot about the strategic, tactical, and operational model. And, this is, where we, our operational folks, I feel like have a lot of space to weigh in and communicate up the line or across the line, as it were.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And for me, I don't know what you had in mind, but for me, it's like they have a lot to contribute about the reality of what's going on. Is that, yeah? Yeah, that's absolutely one of the key values of the operational layer is they're where the rubber, that's where rubber meets road, and that's where reality happens. Wonderful. Good. Any other reasons why it matters for us to focus on methods?
It completes the puzzle, so to speak. You have a purpose and you have outcomes, but you have to figure out to get. And so the methods then become that implementation piece that's needed and necessary to take it from idea to reality.
I love that. Let's see if that capture it right. And necessary for implementing ideas into reality. Does that capture it? It's exactly right. And that one of the things I hope gets clarified or reified through all this is that methods are very important, so important that we shouldn't put them first. Because the reason they're so important is methods are how we spend our resources. You're not really spending your resources on purpose or outcomes. You're spending resource on your methods. And so you don't want to spend your resources improperly. This is like, I'd love to highlight that point. If I had a verbal highlighter, I'd highlight that point that methods cost resources. So we want to make sure we put them into the factors that are most likely to produce our outcomes. And we don't know what those will be if we don't know our outcomes first. And then in order to know our outcomes, we need to know our purpose. So POM is just a recognition of that natural order of things. All right. So now that we have a focus and why it matters, which to me is enough for us to really, have a sense of purpose, then what outcomes from today would reflect that? What would you like to see happen by the end of the day, end of the session? Would this one work? Confirmation of outcomes? Okay.
Maybe some examples of real world challenges and opportunities.
Great. Yeah, because this is what will help us realize what are the factors necessary. What does the real world tell us are the factors necessary for producing our outcomes? Opportunities. Great. Thank you. Others? Other outcomes you'd like to see from today? The brainstorm of methods. I guess that might be a method though.
Yeah, beginning clarity on methods with clear next steps. Something like
Way
that.
better. Beginning clarity of methods and clear next steps. Thank you. Good. Does that do it for us? With that, and we can add to it. So then I had already put this here. This could be our agenda. I'll explore, make sure that this agenda, I'll do it on a bigger slide, will meet those outcomes. So POM aligning for the day. Then we're going to do a little debrief or reflections on STO model and how that might inform at all the coalition structure or just any other reflections you have. Then we would review the outcomes, a refined list of outcomes that April carefully put together based on your feedback, and just have some large group discussion around that. See what you think, if we've refined it, you know, if the outcomes are more to what you're liking. Then we're going to queue up methods. We're just going to kind of, you know, share some general thoughts as we prepare to go into the conversation. But first, we'll take a break. Then we'll have a small group. We're going to give a nice 20 minutes time for an initial brainstorming. And then we're going to come back and have another 30 minutes of what we call affinity diagramming, the work of the small group. So the small group work will really feed into the larger group work. And we're going to start to see hopefully some patterns emerge. Then we'll conclude with a nice plus delta. We didn't do it last time, so we're allowing a little extra time and all that. So that's our thoughts for what would be a good use of our time. So my question would be, would this agenda meet our outcomes? Would it help us confirm the outcomes? Would it, for the coalition, would it provide examples possibly of real world challenges and opportunities? And would our agenda help produce at least the beginning of clarity of methods and tell us what next steps should be? Yeah, any thoughts, questions?
See some nods and some thumbs up.
Cool. Good. So I do have an extra moment. I am going to indulge myself and hopefully edify you all. I just wanted to do a callback to a model we showed that might have just, you know, may not have really landed, but it is a model for how I think meetings should flow. You know, all of our meetings sort of have followed this: initiate, you know, how do we want to get started, get things going? What is it we need to discover? And then what is it we need to resolve so we can wrap things up? And then this leads into a next session. Like that adjourn would then lead into a next connect. So what we do with these meetings, we connect, we do the brain warm up, you know, we clarify our purpose and outcomes and methods for the day, purpose, outcomes, and then design the agenda, which is methods. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be diverging. We're already divergent because we're different people sitting in different bodies with different experiences, right? So that's kind of how every group starts. But hopefully as we explore the topics together, we begin to converge and align, and we end up with pluses and deltas, what contributed to our progress, what hindered our progress, and what's our clarity, who's going to do what by when, and we adjourn. And what you've seen is this is now our 11th iteration of this. Like you could take 11 of these arrows and like put them, you know, all in a string. And these are how we make progress. You know, you think of it as progression sessions. Anyway, thanks for indulging me on that. Any reactions or thoughts? Okay,
think
then,
I think it's-
yes,
I'm sorry. I think it's really effective. We conduct our session in a consistent manner.
Hmm.
So we generally become accustomed to this process that ultimately ends in productivity. And so we can apply it in other places or what have you, but we get used to it. We know what to expect. And it's, I think it keeps us on task.
perfect. Thank you. Yeah, what we call meetings, if we do this, what I showed, then we call them progression sessions. So each of your board meetings, over the course of the year could be a series of progression sessions. At least that's the way I think of them. But I think most organizations, they're just kind of like each meeting's an independent kind of entity, where I see them as like hopefully leading the organization deliberately toward its desired outcomes. Meetings are methods. Methods cost resources, and few things are as expensive as meetings for organizations. When you think about the salaries involved and the opportunity cost of having everyone in a room, and are we making the most of that time with everybody in a room? All right, thank you. I want that as an OD person, it's just always like fun to add that in. So speaking of OD, I wanted to just see thoughts, reflections from our conversation about STO, the 3 roles in an organization, and any reflections from it. I saw that 6 views were there. Now, I don't know how accurate the YouTube counter is because it shows how many views there are. So I don't know if everybody's had a chance to watch it, and I don't know what to review or whatever. So I'm really going to be looking for some thoughts or guidance from you all, your questions, your responses. This is what Flip in the Classroom's all about. So flip away.
So when we're looking at that diagram where there's, overlap between operational and tactical, strategic and tactical, where would you see a potential overlap between strategic and operational? Is there ever a time when those two talk to each other and tactical is not a part of it?
What a great question. Anybody have any thoughts or reactions to that? Like, hey, what's the interactions between strategic and operational? How does that happen? And if and should and when and how?
Yeah, you showed in that video, you showed the role ratios slide.
Oh yeah, let's look at that.
I'll pull that
And
up.
I feel like that is where it's a good question, and that's where I think this comes into play. And like, for instance, we're doing a lot of strategic planning and visioning for the next 5-10 years, whatever. And the operational folks are really instrumental in offering thoughts and ideas about, okay, if Literacy KC needs to move, what does our new home need to look like? How does it need to function on a day-to-day basis? What are the challenges for our students in wayfinding or, knowing where to go and that kind of stuff. So I feel like all of that then plays in, all that feedback will then play into, okay, how do we strategize to find the next best home for Literacy KC? And it's not just on the ground stuff that they're giving feedback into, but also they're really instrumental in things like DEI and program development, additional program development and design for our students. So all of that then plays back into, I think, the strategy and visioning. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
Just to kind of add on to that, I thought the slide that you kind of briefly showed in the video, but I did pause it and look at it closer. The one that was the STOs, and it kind of broke down what each of those were and what it looked like to be part of that. That was exactly kind of the hard example of what Jillian is talking about of, these are the things that could be under strategy and tactics and outcomes or operational outcomes. And when you were talking about how, depending upon what hat you have on, if you're at work or at home, you might go between all of those, and we likely do. that resonated with me.
Yeah, is this the one you were
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, I didn't include it in today's slides, but yeah, this it's in the video and you can screenshot it, and I can get it to you as well if you need it. But yeah, it's just a way to break down a little bit more about, hey, if you're in the strategic role, what does that include? And what I want to say is most people don't know how to think strategically. We're raised to think operationally. I mean, you think about our school system and the way assignments are structured and everything, and just society is about operational, do. And sometimes people let us into the tactics, and sometimes people let us know about the strategic. And even though schools should be organized this way, the people in the strategic roles in our schools are operational. They don't know it because people don't know organizational development. And so the people running our organizations don't think about this. And by the way, most people in OD don't know the STO model. When I learned it, I thought, oh my gosh, this is so obvious. Like, I must have missed this. I must have missed this in business. You know, my undergrad is in management business and my graduate is in organizational communication consultancy. I'm like, well, I must have missed this. No, 20 years into consulting, I realized nobody knows this. They don't think of it this way. They don't. And so what happens is we promote people from operational and tactical, usually because they're the ones that showed up or were the most reliable, you know, had the neatest handwriting or whatever, you know. And then the people who are tactical, they out-survive the other ones, and that's how they make it to strategic. It doesn't mean they know strategy. In fact, chances are it's the opposite, because to be strategic means you should not really be doing a lot of what we normally consider work. What we normally consider work is here and here. We don't normally consider the things we do at the strategic layer work. So the people in these strategic roles are doing what they think of as work, and what Keith Brook would call, what did he call it? Mucking around. What he would say is, if you have your strategic people in the messing around with operations, they're mucking around. And the reason it's bad is because, well, there's several reasons, but the main one is, if they're doing that, who's doing the strategy? If you don't, you need to have the right people in these different roles. And if they don't know strategy and they're in this role and they think their job is to manage the menus at the school lunchroom or manage what the book list that the librarians can purchase, then they really don't understand their role as strategists. They don't understand the survival and thriving role there. And this is why organizations will fail to survive and thrive, not because of the operational layer, not because of the tactical layer, because nobody was managing the strategy, because people don't know how.
Well, and I'm gonna chime in, because I think this video was really stress inducing for me. Because, you know, my whole career has been school startup. And when I looked at this overlapping chart with the STNO and how they relate, and you walk through employee, supervisor, manager, director, CEO, the schools don't have those. They don't have enough people to have people dedicated to the work that needs to be done. You know, you've got your classroom teachers, and then you've got a few other people who end up managing 30 people ineffectively, or who have to jump in and out of classrooms, or, you know, I mean, and the idea, I mean, I remember saying to my husband when I switched to Turn the Page, Casey was like, you know what I did today? I started something and I finished it. Like, because that was unheard of. Like, that I wouldn't get pulled away or drawn away or have kids at the door or need to help out, or, you know, and literally there were days where I remember having to work on the strategic plan and the presentation for the board meeting and go get trunk or treat set up. Like, it's just not really effective. So yeah, I agree with you that, like, that some of it is about who's moving into those roles and what background and support do they have, but a lot of it is also just do nonprofits and education in particular, do they have enough manpower to even cover the demands of what needs to be done?
I'm going to put a video I just watched. It was in my feed from this weekend. It asked the question, let's see. Yeah, we're taught that education can end poverty. Here's the truth. And it's from the New York Times. Now, I'm suspicious when someone says, here's the truth, but it provides a really interesting insight into a case study, I think in Sierra Leone, where they were really investing in education, but it wasn't meeting the outcomes. Spoiler alert, it was that the teachers weren't getting paid to do the job. The teachers were shaking down the students for money, beating them if they didn't come with payments, literally. I mean, and so if you don't have the staffing, then how can you get the outcomes? And I think our funders don't realize it. It's why I don't automatically assume a funder is a philanthropist. That's a story for another day. Also, we're at 11:05 and I'm all about sticking to the agenda. But before I depart, any other thoughts or questions? Because this is supposed to be flipped. People have
Yeah, one thing I would like to kind of challenge the group to think about is specifically drawing the line between, you know, the STO kind of in principle structures and what does it mean for this coalition as we're thinking through governance structures specifically. So, you know, steering committee, probably strategic, tactical, what would that look like if we were to build it out? Operational, what would that look like if we're thinking about, you know, building out membership roles, for example, for a coalition, you know, and leadership levels within a coalition, what would that look like? So, you know, some of that is food for thought, but some of it is a real question. Like if you've all come across, for example, with your Muse research, good structures that seem to be like, you know, able to thread that needle. And also, and I dropped kind of in the chat, just my synthesis of what I was hearing are like three major questions is like, do you have the right people with the right expertise in each role? Do you have enough resources devoted to each role and specifically strategic layer, but not only? And then are institutional structures intentionally set up to help each role succeed? So those are all kind of just food for thought, you know, that's very relevant to us as we're getting into methods of how are we building this thing. So just curious if there are any thoughts on that.
Honestly, I hadn't thought about it in that way yet, but it's definitely something that we can as we go into groups, I guess.
So important. One of the things, well, first, let me just kind of show you this. This was something from this weekend or last week. Our students in our youth group that April and I run, they're ready to wrap up their 3-year journey, and they're trying to get their project embedded in an organization. Here in town, we have something called the Oklahoma Coalition Against Trafficking, OCAT. And so as they were as the students, our high school students are meeting with the director of the coalition. She's describing the structure. They have their advisors, which is the strategic layer. They have then the general coalition, which is strategic, but I would also think of it as the tactical. And then they have their 6 subcommittees, which is how she said all the things happen in their coalition is through the committee structure. And that, you know, and that this would be the operational or action layer. Now, she didn't use those terms, but it was just, it's exactly what's laid out here. And what I also want to mention is, see, I've learned that when people do strategic planning, they're not really helping themselves. See, they're creating a whole lot of plans that for things that need to get done, but they don't have the structure to support it. Like when you look at a strategic plan that organizations create, it's basically a job list, like adding 50% work on each person's job, essentially. It doesn't get rid of the stuff they're already doing, which they're already usually at max capacity, especially in nonprofits. So this is why strategic plans often don't happen, because the strategies are divorced from the structure and the organizational realities. But if you structure your plan as an STO and your organizational structure is an STO, then now your strategic plan isn't divorced from your organization. It's basically it's a roadmap for your organization. It's an instruction guide for a how-to guide for how you're going to build out your structure to match your okay. I have a lot to say on this topic. We're well past our time. Thank you for the flipped classroom. Great discussion. Let's get into some outcomes, which I'm going to hand over to April.
Great. So yeah, Adam can show on the screen where we've landed with our next iteration of outcomes. And again, this is just a draft. We took the last version and tried to integrate and reflect back what we heard from you all. So I would love to get your feedback. And what you'll see is essentially well, first of all, we took away the indicators for now, just so that we can have kind of that high level agreement on like, are these the right outcomes? So I felt like there was enough uncertainty about the outcomes to where we needed to just double down on those and think about, indicators a little bit later down the line. And again, I think as we get into methods, specific indicators also might become a little bit more clear. Other feedback that I heard from you all was, we want to be consistent in our usage of terminology and talking about KC citizens. And we want to be really inclusive when we're talking about, can you leave it up on the screen?
Oh, sure.
When we're talking about KC citizens, to make sure that we're, from what I heard from you all, we're empowering them, we're giving them, information, and they're also beneficiaries. And so that was something that I wanted to make really clear in this version of the outcomes was we weren't just talking about people as beneficiaries. We weren't just talking about people as agents of literacy and empowerment. The same citizens are the same ones that are doing these different roles or are involved in these different roles. So that was something that I tried to capture. And so the way that this is structured is the first kind of cluster of bullet points, the top three are more citizen focused. So citizens are, and again, it's broken into three. So citizens are informed of the importance of literacy. So they have access to high quality data and they're aware of the importance and benefit of literacy. They're empowered as agents of literacy, so they have concrete pathways and steps they can take to personally contribute to advancing literacy. And then they have access, they're beneficiaries. That's also an important focus of this, of course, is they have access to holistic support across the lifespan, however we want to define that. So the first cluster is on citizens. The second cluster is a little bit more of like the institutional approach and kind of the outcomes that we're wanting to see from KC institutions writ large, talking about nonprofits, government, education, libraries, the whole spectrum. So KC institutions are mobilized to support the vision of KC as a literate city. That's sort of like an umbrella outcome. It's like one of the most ambitious is that we're all mobilized and we're all working together towards this vision. And kind of, outcomes under that could be a sustainable coalition structure is established, of course, really important. And this idea that literacy advocates are aligning on key concept and best practices for literacy across the lifespan. So that would mean that they were agreeing on key definitions, best practices, a shared curriculum, for example, and just in general, the coalition's action plan for creating this, KC as a literate city vision. So those were kind of the two clusters that came out of the conversation last time we met. And then Adam and I were talking, and I think this is also something that was coming through our conversations with you all, that there's sort of a maybe a more indirect, but still very important kind of element of the outcomes of, what does literacy actually produce in a city? Like, what are we hoping to get to as an end state when we're talking about KC as a literate city? And I think there's a recognition that there are kind of knock-on impacts that come from reaching higher literacy, goals for the city. So we just threw in as a bonus outcome. It's not something that we have to keep or not, but it was more food for thought that KC would realize, these long-term community level benefits. KC as a whole would thrive because of the realization of the KC as a literate city vision. And, you know, that could be evidenced by all sorts of knock-on indirect impacts, you know, from education attainment to economic prosperity to decreased homelessness, and all the rest. So that was just kind of talking you through our thought process a little bit. I'd love to get any feedback. Really, I think, first of all, on the first two clusters, to make sure that those are where we need them to be. And then we can talk about, you know, whether or not it makes sense to add the bonus outcome. Again, that was really more food for thought, just from our side.
Yeah, your feedback and reactions are extremely important to us on this.
I think the first two groupings include everything that I was, you know, taking away from our conversations in a way that's more clear and specific and easy to read. And I know you said save it for later, but I especially like the bonus outcome. I think it really will help the broader community understand why this is the starting point, why this focus area matters to everyone.
Thank you. Any other reactions? And feel free to be brutal, guys. There is no hurting our feelings. This is the process to get to where we need to be, for you all to be able to use these outcomes as a tool. You know, as you know, purpose and outcomes are like the bedrock of everything that we'll build together. So it's important to get it right.
I'll chime in. I really like that these are very succinct, but they're very actionable. I think it's something that's achievable, and as we're thinking about, you know, how things move and change and how we kind of shape things as we go, I think this is a great starting off point as far as, you know, we have to have a structure. We have to everybody has to know what we're considering, what we're trying to do here. And I'm with Kristen. I like the bonus outcome for sure. And not to mention funders will love it too.
Yeah, for sure.
I like the way you broke down KC citizens, you know, and thinking about, you know, informed, empowered, and kind of to echo, I guess, what Jenny said, like you could break it down and like give this as an elevator speech pretty quickly based on the way you've set it up. And then when you look at this, you can see all the fleshed out details. But I feel like this is something that's relatively easy to communicate. And I also really like the bonus outcome. It's kind of like the why that I agree funders will like.
All right. So there's no critiques. Come on, guys. I was so ready for criticism.
I thought this could have been indented a little more. No, just kidding.
You did the formatted, Adam. So.
Okay, well then, beautiful.
Well, that's great, guys. I'm really glad that this means that we're kind of settling in our vision a little bit. And as with everything, you know, there's a little bit of a good enough. Is this good enough, you know, to move on to the next stage sort of attitude? And so these are definitely living documents. I think it was Jenny that said that, you know, this is mentioned that, you know, this is good enough for where we are right now. And as we continue to move forward in our conversation, you know, through you know, our brainstorming together around methods, we may realize, oh, hey, we totally forgot this outcome, or now we need to tweak, you know, our vision of you know, how this is going to fit in based on, you know, how the reality is shaking out, or specific approaches that we're taking with our methods. So so yeah, I think just keeping in mind that these are living documents, we can come back to them anytime. But that's exciting to see that we have, you know, a draft that we're excited about, and that we think that we could, you know, as Linda mentioned, you know, potentially bring to the community, and it could be compelling. So
Yeah, and I just want to clarify, like, so I heard this is no longer a bonus outcome, is that right? I didn't hear that. I made it up, but what do you got? It sounded like for you all that this actually is something we'd like to adopt. So it's basically all citizens, the institutions, and then I don't know if you refer to it as the KC Metropolitan. I don't know how you refer to it, but that it realizes it. And I really liked what you all were saying about this, because it really does, you know, it does address anyone who's like, what's your literacy got to do with me? You know, you're like, yeah, well, a lot, a lot. I'm not trying to hear that, see?
I also think it could be beneficial to add in the evidenced by benefits to public health. Because literacy got talked about by funders more during COVID as a health related issue than it ever has been before, I think.
Right, yeah, we can throw that in there for sure. And yeah, those were really kind of more illustrative indicators, right? That's a way that you can think of that parentheses, but yeah, definitely makes a lot of sense to put those in there now.
And I also liked hearing people, someone say, you know, how funders would react, how the wider community would react. I mean, because this and the person who said that this could be a you know, sort of like an elevator speech, in that, you know, it says what we're after. Is this worth funding? Is this worth getting and volunteering for? Is this worth putting on your agenda? Is this worth talking about? I mean, I don't know who would say no. No, not at all. I mean, this, and so I really like that y'all were thinking about it that way. Okay, well then, it looks like we've got a lock onto our outcomes, which brings us right on time to queuing up methods a little bit, because basically methods are how we produce outcomes. Methods are basically your statement for how we are going to spend our resources in order to produce these outcomes. Your strategies are the high-level statements about how we will spend our resources to meet these outcomes. Let's see, do I still have that illustration? Yeah. Your strategies will be the high-level answer to the question of how we'll meet our outcomes. Your tactics are sort of the mid-range use of resources for how you're going to, and the actions are like the moment-to-moment, day-to-day use of the resources, or operations. I use those words interchangeably. So basically, our purpose statement has stayed the same. We haven't adjusted that since our last session. Our purpose, we aim to utilize our collective resources to establish Kansas City as the model literate city where lifelong learning is accessible and valued by all community members. And that's what our purpose is over here. And as we project forward out into the future, what does it look like? Well, it looks like all Kansas City citizens are informed, empowered, and have access to benefits across the lifespan. And that the institutions are mobilized. There's a sustainable coalition structure that has to happen. I mean, this is the vehicle through which, you know, things happen. This is the tortilla chip through which the salsa will be delivered. It's the delivery device. Without this, you know, and that not just that, but advocates align and further radiate or project those values of literacy across the lifespan. And then we don't have the third one in there, but it's the, you know, what we're calling the bonus, but the wider Kansas City outcomes. All right. So do those outcomes reflect the purpose? Let me just check that real quick. Any thoughts or reactions? Do the outcomes we agreed upon, do they reflect this purpose? Does it make us want to adjust the purpose at all, by the way, too? Because this is the kind of one of the last times. I mean, we could do it, adjust the purpose later, but we really don't want to. We really want to get the purpose set. So yeah, do these outcomes inform our purpose at all?
I think the valued by all community members, adding that bonus outcome is a good way to get the value in
Nice.
there.
Good. Yeah, any other reactions or thoughts to outcomes reflecting the purpose or just the purpose statement itself? All right. I mean, that's what we're looking for is alignment among purpose, outcomes, and methods, because that's our thought bubble. That's what's in our thought bubble. And if we could align on our purpose, outcomes, and methods, and not just here, think about in your own relationships or, you know, in your organizations, you want to make sure everybody has the shared thought bubble. Why are we here? What outcomes are we trying to produce? And how are we going to spend our resources to get there? Oh, by the way, I just want to say a little tidbit. One of the things I realized is most of the conflicts people have is over how to spend resources. We don't think of it that way. I mean, with money, we do, it's obvious. But with attention and time, it's a little less obvious. Why are you spending your time on that? Why are you doing that? Why are you hanging out with those people? You know, why aren't you paying attention to this? You should be paying more attention to this. You should be spending your attention resources more on this and less on that. Just a little side thought. But now what I want to say, the methods tie in, you know, so you've seen us draw it this way. This is more of a drawn out version where we're looking at two vectors, really. The POM model is really about two vectors. One vector is the alignment vector. This is about having the shared thought bubble, you know. We all picture the same thing when we say, what do we mean by Kansas City Coalition? Well, we mean here's our purpose, here's our outcomes, and here's the methods for how we're going to get there. Okay, we all see the same thing. Great. What I want to do is I want to zero in now on the methods part. Oh, because the second vector or dimension of this is action. We want to get to action. We don't want to get to motion. Motions are bad. Motions spend our resources without really being tied to our tactics, that are tied to our strategies, that are considered a main factor for producing our outcome, that are a reflection of our purpose. Motions have got no purpose. And most of what happens in organizations are motions, not actions. If I were to write a Harvard Business Review article, it would be action to motion ratio. What, as an individual, what's your action to motion ratio? As an organization, as a couple, you know? I start to think of this now as something that organizations have. They have something called an action economy. An action economy. This is truly what we have to spend. Are people wasting their resources on motions? If I can spell economy, or are we doing the actions? It's one of the most important determinants of effectiveness, but it doesn't even have a name. Now it does. Action to motion ratio. All right. So bringing it back here now, what I wanted to show is that your methods, I'm gonna like kind of, you know, turn it sideways so it's not as nice. I mean, you got to kind of read it sideways, but basically what we're really doing is first, I want to say the only thing that produces an outcome is an action. Actions are the only things that produce outcomes, but emotions might, if you're lucky. That's the problem with motions. You don't know. It's like piñata, like you're wearing the blindfold and you're going to swing until good stuff comes out, but you're wasting a lot of resources. You know, if you take the blindfold off, now you're swinging the baton and you're taking actions. You're going to hit the piñata and you're going to get the good stuff that falls out, the outcomes, the candy. Actions together are united around a tactic, and tactics together comprise a strategy. Before we call them strategies, we think of them as, well, we think of all of these as factors that are necessary for producing our outcomes. That's how we arrive at what our strategies and tactics could be. The thing is, they don't come out like in a nice, neat, organized hierarchy like this. They come out messy and sloppy, and that's perfect. We want it that way. But these are the factors when we what we're putting into our little messy pool are factors necessary. I'm writing with the mouse, that's why. Factors necessary for producing our outcomes. That's really the question. What are the factors? If these are the outcomes that will fulfill our purpose, then what are the factors or elements or ingredients, many words, for what's necessary? Let's get our minds on those things so that we can, get them out. Let's use the collective wisdom of everyone in the group to really try to brainstorm what those are. And we'll sort them out later. Don't worry about the order. They're going to tell us the order on their own in a way. So yeah, that was my little cue up for methods, but we're also going to give you a little break before we actually jump into it. So any comments, questions, reactions to anything so far?
One thing I'll just walk you through really quickly. I think we shared this lemonade stand example with you all before, but I don't know if we really talked through it. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it right now, but just to let you know that this is a reference. You can always look back at it at any point in your purpose outcome method journey. Just for like a concrete example of like, what would this look like with a lemonade stand? So if your purpose was to sell lemonade, it matters because you want to earn pocket money, you want to get to know the neighbors, etc. And then the outcomes for the lemonade stand would be it's profitable, it's popular, neighbors feel more comfortable with each other and share in an increased sense of community. So again, those are just kind of some basic outcomes that reflect this purpose to run a popular lemonade stand that serves as a fun and refreshing gathering place for the neighborhood community during summer break. And then of course you can get into indicators, we did that together. We talked about lag, current, and leading. And then this is the piece that we're going to be working on together now is based on these outcomes. So it's profitable, it's popular, and it's a place where neighbors feel comfortable. There's a sense of community. What are the factors necessary to thrive? Like where would we want to put our resources and how would we want to deploy our resources to be able to create these outcomes? So one kind of high level strategy or, factor necessary to thrive, we use those interchangeably, would be engaged and approachable employees. So employees are creating a welcoming and fun environment for customers. We'd want a high quality product. So that would be a strategy. And then we'd be breaking down, into tactics and actions of how we would go about creating a high quality product. And then another could be superior customer experience. So that would be where we would be putting our efforts, our resources to make sure that really comes through. So again, it's just a little bit of a walkthrough of how these pieces fit together. And during our time together, we'll be asking you to essentially brainstorm a list of, based on your list of outcomes, what are the factors necessary to thrive? Where are places we want to put our resources and ways that we want to deploy our resources? Or what if we want to get these outcomes, what do we need to do to get there? And so just brainstorming a list. And then when we come back as a big group, we'll be essentially throwing them up all on a board and trying to make sense of the patterns that emerge from that. So does that make sense? All right, cool.
That's really helpful. Thanks, April.
Of course, yeah. And I'll drop this this example into the chat as well, so you all will have access to it. But that said, I think we're good for a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and get into groups.
Well, we were milking it for every last moment. Our ideas were we were just getting warmed up.
All right, awesome. That's great. Well, welcome back, guys. We had a great conversation in my breakout group, and I hope you all had fun with that exercise and didn't overthink it. That was really the idea, is just like, we need a this and we need a that, and let's, throw some ideas around. So I hope that was the spirit of the exercise. I am going to, so actually Katina recommended Jamboard as a good platform. It's just, I think it's a Google-based platform, Google Drive-based. So if you have Google, you should be able to get to the board that I just, except I need to press share. So let me do that. Not restrict it. Let everybody edit it. Okay, so if you just refresh what I just sent, you should all have access. And we're going to do what we call affinity diagramming, which is make clusters of sticky notes and see, you know, how the patterns emerge. So what we'd like you to do is a representative from each group pick the top 3, and this is a very loose concept of top 3, like 3 just kind of starter factors, and make sticky notes with those factors on them. So I'll give everybody just a minute to make those sticky notes. So one person from each group, if you can just take the initiative, either say verbally that it's going to be you or drop in the chat if you're going to do it, and then make 3 sticky notes with 3 of your factors, and then we'll start talking through it. Thank you, Lauren.
Thanks, Lauren.
Who wants to go from group 2?
What are we doing?
And I can share my screen just so we can all kind of see it coming together.
You didn't really prioritize. And we have a long list.
Again, don't worry too much about, like, when I say top, I just mean pick 3 and we'll go from there. All of them will ultimately be represented. So
Okay.
We kind
Yeah,
of
I'll do it.
put ours in a kind of strategy tactic structure. So I'm not quite sure what to put on the sticky notes. April, can you just
So
look?
so for the strategies and tactics, just at this point, it's great that you guys got into that level of detail. For the point of this exercise, just act like it doesn't have one of those labels. It doesn't matter how specific the sticky note is.
Okay.
So any tactic, any strategy can go on a sticky note.
Okay. Are you guys comfortable with me doing one, or is someone already doing it?
We can popcorn them. You guys, this could get messy. It should get messy. Slap stuff around is what I'm thinking. This is like Jackson Pollock or whatever. Just these ideas, splatter them up there, make a mess. Is that okay? April, is that
Well,
all right?
I want 3 to be made per group. So
Okay.
however you want to splatter them to have 3 made.
All right. I'm
But
gonna
it
give you a
looks
little
like maybe one group already has 3 up there. So I guess when you're done, kind of like put up your hand or drop in the chat or something like that, and we can start kind of talking through it.
Jenny, did you go? Okay, I was doing group 2. Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, this is confusing.
That's
Okay.
what I thought.
Sorry, guys. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out if you were putting it up there, Julia, because I was like, there's some people there's some things already looking in common. So I was like,
I'm actually, the pink ones are mine. I'm probably messing up April up, but I added a couple. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you shouldn't have done that, Adam, but I forgive you. All right, we have some to get started. So let's start with group 1. Group 1, can you talk us through your sticky notes?
Yeah, hang on just a second. I just hit the sticky note to go and it wasn't right, and now I don't know where it is.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, the link is there,
And-
Katina. Sorry, I see you just joined. We just finished breakout groups and now we're doing a share out.
And that's why I didn't volunteer, Kristen, because I don't want to figure that out.
Hang on, just a second. Define leadership and. Okay. All right. Are these supposed to be grouped together?
No, just
okay.
go ahead and talk through
Okay.
your 3.
Okay, so I kind of pulled things from here. And so we started with which one was it? Intentional. Here we go. Intentional. I can't read it on there. intentional streamlined communication system and platform that houses resources. And then in our notes, we kind of partnered that with a citywide PR campaign, and particularly talked about making sure that everyone had access to those communications or platform or resources in a way that was understandable to them. And then I pulled from another area where I said, define the roles and responsibilities within the core leadership and consider, are we the right, do we have the right people assigned to the right roles, specifically keeping in mind that STNO conversation we just had.
Okay, love it. So this is sort of a governance piece. This is like institutional data or a kind of hub, resource hub piece, and then PR campaign. Great. All right, next group. Please introduce your sticky notes. And as you're introducing them, we'll just consider these three as like the anchor sticky notes. And so you can place your sticky note based on how close it is to, you know, these strategies that are already up there.
Okay, so we also said citywide multifaceted PR campaign. That includes libraries, billboards, news stations, sports teams, buses and metro stations, hospitals, all of the people. And then of course, budget. So defining the budget so that we know how much, you know, this stuff is going to cost, as well as finding a sustainable funding structure. I don't know where you want me to put that one.
That can be up to its own, maybe kind of somewhere between governance and data hub.
And then partnering with some sort of research institution so that we can evaluate, you know, whether or not we're actually doing what we think we're going to be doing. And that's sort of a governance, I don't know. Yeah. So those are the three that I chose out of our group. I don't know if y'all would agree with me or not, but.
Great. No, it's great. It's perfect.
All right, awesome. Thank you. Group number 3.
All right. I again was just trying to, when reflecting on our conversation, we're like, okay, what needs to happen first? So thinking kind of chronologically, identifying what kind of, on that scale of 1 to 7, identifying how much synchronicity and what the structure of that collective impact organization is going to look like. So I felt like that kind of exists down here within like governance and that kind of thing. We also were thinking about coming up with a name and what our branding strategy, our you know, our PR campaign's going to look like. And then we got to secure the monies.
Secure the money. Great. Beautiful. Yeah, already starting to see some commonalities. Adam Group, can you please introduce your sticky notes?
I'm a group of 1. I thought cultivating and training volunteers to support our various things. I know that'll come down the road. Maybe this is about programming. I don't know if we have a programming cluster, or if you guys see this as part of a different cluster, or yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
To me, a lot of these are to seem like they connect back to the defining the roles and responsibilities and making sure that the right people are working in the right areas. So like budgeting is or securing funding, you know, that's something that a team will work on, and the research part, you know, making sure that we are including the folks that can monitor the data for, you know, for that whole project. I think those are all parts of that structure, aren't they? And I would think programming would be too.
Yeah, I can see it also kind of fitting. I see like sort of like a partnerships or, you know, thinking through the operational layer, like who are kind of the partners or the members that we're going to be leveraging at that layer. So that they could also fit down here.
I was thinking operational. So when I look at intentional streamlined communication systems, platforms, and blah, 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 not blah, 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 like I'm minimizing, I'm not. There's a lot to read. But I'm wondering if, because that one that says define the roles and responsibilities within the core leadership, that to me says something different than operationalizing things. And so when I think of operational as more hands-on, and so I would think training volunteers would be more operational, and even an evaluation partner. I would think those would be more operational. But I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, we can make, I mean, I think we're seeing a pattern. We can kind of, you know, flesh this out a little bit by saying, you know, we need an operational layer and maybe these would fit under it, something like that. Did you want to introduce your last sticky note, Adam?
Yeah, the last one I had was developing relationships with policymakers. So for that one, I don't know where that would go necessarily. I mean, policy could be its own cluster, so I'm open. Any thoughts on where that could go, if that's relevant?
It's definitely relevant, but I think it would probably fall under like an advocacy label.
So I'm just gonna, yeah, I'll just leave it over here because maybe okay, yeah. Because it would help lead to maybe some funding if you know, it might help provide awareness of what we're doing to a particular audience who we can influence. So I'll leave it there. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see how this could be a bridge to the PR campaign as well, for sure. All right. Well, we just have a couple more minutes. Could we have maybe each group present one more idea from your list? One or two more ideas? Let's do 2 ideas. Let's do 2 ideas and then we'll call it a day. And if the sticky notes are too hard to use, I can type them out if you'll just present orally.
I put one up for group 1. While people are doing that, we had a kind of an aside thought. As we were looking at the 3 outcomes and thinking about it in terms of how they translate back to strategies, it might make more sense to put the 3rd one in the position of the 2nd one and move the wider Casey community realizes long-term community level benefits before we are trying to convince institutions to jump on board as meaningfully engaged stakeholders in the process. So I don't know if that goes on this sticky note or if that's just a different conversation.
So it's just a reordering of the outcomes.
That's what we were thinking.
Yeah, no, I think that's totally up to you guys. And it really is you know, at the end of the day, the outcomes, the order of the outcomes doesn't really matter as much as the messaging of the outcomes and how you're presenting them. And so for different stakeholders, they might be like slightly different emphases, that sort of thing, but we can certainly put that at the top of the list. I think that makes sense. Was there any other reactions to that? I mean, do we have consensus we'd like to move it up or any other thoughts on that?
Okay, I think that makes sense.
All right. I'd love it if the groups could present their last ideas for now, not the last ideas forever.
Well, I added define a literacy advocate and how they may vary across all stakeholder groups. is I think what that means for different kinds of entities or organizations could vary.
Great. Yeah, I'm gonna put that over next to advocacy. If that makes sense to you guys. Group 2?
Are we too?
Yeah, you're 2.
Okay, I haven't done the sticky note for this, but
Okay, I can make one for you.
okay, thank you. I was gonna add the data clearinghouse. So we were just talking about the need for us to have some kind of system, right, where we can gather all this important data. And then the summit. So creating some kind of summit event that would bring together maybe even a mix of those important business community members along with nonprofit agencies and the coalition. So having like those big players at the table at one summit.
Great. Yeah, where would you guys put a summit event?
In the advocacy, maybe?
Yeah, I still feel like it's still a PR piece too. So
Uh-huh.
still, promoting what's going on.
Okay, great. And then data clearinghouse. Any thoughts on
The
that?
operational piece.
Yeah, maybe with this hub one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Group number 3. Bring us home.
Something I felt like really invigorated our group was talking about actually reaching out to some of the Muse organizations that we talked about this week and getting to know, the good, the bad, and the ugly of what their coalition's processes have been. And I've got it here on.
Oh,
my
you
little-
got it. Okay, sorry.
And so I'm not sure where that one lives.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, and I see this kind of with these as well, there's going to be a partnerships sort of aspect to this. It's going to be naturally as part of the coalition. So I can see like a partnerships
And then
area. What else you got?
to start in from the get-go engaging with our neighborhood councils and parent organizations and like citizen groups to start generating bold action plans.
Nice.
To kind of like from the beginning showing that we're not here to just talk at them and that we actually want to engage them in the process.
All right, cool. And yeah, I see you're putting that kind of down with the structure of the coalition, maybe close to partnerships, that sort of thing. All right. Well, thank you guys. I know this is a little bit messy, but I just wanted to, I think it was an important exercise for us to just start kind of thinking through, what do we need to see? What are the methods that need to happen? Think big and think, open your mind to like all the different possibilities, throw some stuff on the board, start to see the patterns that are emerging. Could maybe one person take a stab at just kind of summarizing in just a couple words, hey, I see, these 3 things are kind of emerging as higher level focuses for this group, anything like that?
Well, I'll take a stab at one and then everyone else can help. Looks like, definitely a PR campaign of some sort is in our future to let everyone know what's happening and coming up with how that looks.
Great.
Yeah, I think developing our operational structure after this period ends, how are we going to continue to function collectively?
Perfect. And one more.
I think there's something woven through about like how we train people and how we,
Hmm.
disseminate this information, who gets involved and who gets, what around that, who gets to share this information.
Yeah, I like that.
I think this is huge. I really do. When you're building a coalition, there has to be a shared mindset. And there's so many ways people can get off track and have different mindsets. And this just it'll lead to contrast and discord eventually. And that weakens a coalition. So really having that clear mindset and making sure there's that alignment I mean, I don't know if it could be overdone.
All right, well, I think that's it for this activity. As homework for us as consultants, we're going to look at all of the data that you provided, your list of methods, and just try to do a little bit more in terms of building out the patterns that we're seeing, and be able to present that back to you next Monday. You want to bring us home with plus delta, Adam?
I would love to. All right, so this is what we did today. I just want to reiterate kind of the diagram, and maybe now after having done the exercise, it starts to come more into picture. We still have ways to go, but do you see the fuller picture getting completed? And speaking of pictures, I wanted to show some of the important artwork of what the small group breakout artwork was. And then this one is like the war room of like the brains getting literacy all out through Kansas City. This is the kind of planning and masterminding I think is going to be needed. All right. I really love that image, so I want to show it. All right. Pluses and deltas, what contributed to our progress and or what detracted from our progress so that we could learn? Pluses or deltas?
I don't know if it's this session or just, working up to this session, but I thought your flip classroom video was helpful as we came into this.
Yeah, thank you. Other feedback, pluses or deltas?
I really like the visual of the Jamboard and being able to see everybody's thoughts and how they interact with each other.
I thought it was useful the way you guys on the back end took those outcomes and took all of the brainstorming and solidified it for us. I think it's helping us move forward.
All right, very nice.
Okay, I know we're at time. I did want to let you all know, so I loved the idea that Lauren, I think, brought up about reaching out to muses. It's actually one thing we'd love for you guys to consider doing as homework. We can't force you to, of course, but actually reaching out to these organizations, setting up an informational interview, being able to do a little bit of a deeper dive to learn about them and see if they'd be willing to, give a little bit of information about their experience and their story and their, their lessons learned. So it would be great if people would reach out to the muses either with specific questions or setting up a meeting. If you do set up a meeting, maybe let us know, and there could be other coalition members that would love to join that meeting as well. All right, and that said, I know we're at time. Thank you all so much for this great conversation. I always enjoy our Monday mornings together. I look forward to seeing you next week.
Mm-hmm. Have a great rest of the day.
Bye, guys.
Bye, y'all. Good job.